Sometimes nothing can be a real cool hand. It's one of my favorite quotes by one of my all-time favorite actors, Paul Newman. Um, I'm a huge Paul Newman fan. Um, if I had to pick a favorite film, funny, it would be that film. But I have to admit, I really enjoyed introducing my kids to Cars, thanks to his turn as Doc. This phrase, this saying, has a special meaning for me in career and in leadership. Years ago, I had several different opportunities. I was being recruited. I had some internal opportunities. I had external opportunities. And I wound up doing absolutely nothing. And it was the best thing I could have possibly done. I think often we feel compelled to make a change, to make a move, because it feels like the thing to do, because we feel antsy in a current role. It could be because our stock is high and we feel like we need to parlay it into something else while we have that momentum, or we may lose an opportunity. Sometimes the best opportunity is the trajectory you're on, and you've got to see that through. In this case, it was a situation where I absolutely recommend that you explore all possible paths. But when it comes down to it, you've got to compare point by point, pros and cons, make a list, figure out what's important at your core. What are your top priorities? Are you on the path that is going to get you to where you want to be next, or to advance yourself, or to further yourself? Or does this other opportunity give you something that you can't live without? Frankly, when it all comes down to it, if you look at the key things that matter most to you, opportunities for growth, compensation, the opportunity to work with different teams, and frankly, where you believe that path will beget future opportunities, these are the types of things that you need to think about when you make that decision. It's, let me take this current trajectory that I'm on, this current role, and let me compare it to this other thing. But the other piece too is there's no comparison until this is tangible. I know a lot of people that they find out about this other role, they pin all their hopes onto that conversation. You're still here. You've got to act as if you are still here until something changes. I liken it to merger talks. Even if you're promised a role or you're moving into another role, until that actually transpires, you're 100% here. And you've got to make sure that you maintain, because there's a lot of things at stake, your performance, your reputation, and frankly, until this actually happens, until it's signed, sealed, delivered, it's not real. And until there's an offer on the table, there's no decision to make. So absolutely, you're good, and you should explore every single path that you feel should better yourself. And at the end of the day, if you get an offer and you take a look and compare the two roles, and it's not a better move for you, and all of those things that you identified earlier as your top priorities, you do nothing, and nothing's a cool hand. The other thing, from a leadership standpoint, you're often tasked with difficult decisions, and you by no means have to react or respond immediately. In fact, you shouldn't. The more time you spend thinking about some of these things, and certainly don't take too much, but the more time you spend thinking about some of these types of things, the more you show the people that are impacted by your decision how important that decision is to you as well, which in turn shows them that their perspective is important. Spend the time needed to gain all necessary perspectives, because every decision you make is going to impact other people. So always make sure that you understand exactly what those parameters were. I remember a time years ago where I had two managers that reported to me, that brought to me a competing scenario, and I listened. And in the course of the time that we all sat together, I said very little. I allowed them to say their piece, and at the time it was a disputed sale. I let them say their piece and get everything out, and then asked them, how they would recommend that things be reconciled. These are people that work together, and ultimately they wound up coming to a compromise while we all sat there together. I really didn't have to do much. As a leader, you've got to foster the collaboration, the transparency, the communication, remove blockers, certainly, make decisions ultimately that are going to benefit the needs of the many over the needs of the few or the needs of the one. But ultimately, you've got to foster that environment that is conducive for people to work together, to collaborate, to compromise. And again, sometimes nothing is a real cool hand. Allow these conversations to transpire. Don't stand in the way. And very oftentimes, people will come to terms without you having to make a decision, certainly not a knee-jerk reaction. The last thing I would add is that also in the lines of sometimes nothing is a real cool hand, there's often going to be times, especially when you add a lot of value in a situation where you're asked a lot of questions. People task you with things very, very regularly. And this can become cumbersome, especially if you have a job and a role, you have a lot of responsibilities, you're having a busy day, week, month, and you're being asked a lot of different questions because of the relationships you have and the value that you bring. I had a valued contact years ago. She told me that, if you don't answer them right away, often people will find the answer on their own. And it's true. I still find that to this day. If I can't get to somebody right away, whereas the previous me, I would have rushed to find the answer, to answer them as quickly as humanly possible. But these types of things can take you off task, and especially if you're committed to a course of action and getting something completed. Sometimes these messages can take you away from that and minimize your effectiveness. But I've found more often than not that very often these questions, they answer them of their own volition. And when I reach back out to these folks, because I always do, I always make sure you get back to them and make sure that they know that you're there and supportive. But more often than not, I've gotten a message back that said, I found the answer. So again, sometimes nothing is a real cool hand because it enables people that are asking you questions to find the answers elsewhere, but it also enables you to stay committed to your present course and complete the task. So don't forget, like Paul Newman said, sometimes nothing is a real cool hand. Thanks for watching.